like field, same education and everything. Like looking at my professors, how much they make online, I saw like my professors that had the same amount of education, same experience, in the same field for the same animal in animal science. The women were making 75 to 80,000 a year compared to the men making 90 to 100,000 a year. What would you just say?
Well, wait. Were they the same, roughly the same age?
Mm-hmm.
And did they have the same number of publications in the same journals and the same? You know, you need to know that. And believe me, if there was like systemic discrimination in a public university, or people would know it and complain. I mean, I think there's probably a logical explanation. For example, people, I've heard feminists complain in universities that professors in the School of Social Work make vastly less than the business school. But the business school will tell you, for us to hire someone who has the talent to be a PhD in business, he has the talent to teach at Stanford Business School, he could make a fortune in the outside world. So we have to have very high salaries. In the School of Social Work, they don't have that, they're not competing. So in most universities, you will find in the law schools and the business schools where you have more men. It's changing in the law schools a little bit. Men get paid more because of outside, because of what these people would be paid on the outside. Now again, try to change it, and with a policy that won't be ruinous to the economy, I would welcome it. Or that wouldn't be unfair because you are maybe punishing a man for working extra hours or for having more publications. You've got to know. Now, if you can show me a case in that department where they're the same age and he gets more, and same productivity and so forth, and community service, and he gets more, that is discrimination. And there are laws against it. So I would be surprised if the Human Resources Department of this university would let that happen. They must have asked for an explanation. Oh, if you have any question. Someone else? Someone new? Yes?
Yeah, so I can see what you're saying about, without knowing the logistics, it's hard to conclude as to why certain people might be getting paid more. But in the controls that are set to determine, wage, might there be some indirect factors that might be resulting in these wage differences? Like, for example, you mentioned your sister-in-law took 20 years off, but, and this is just like an example, but maybe that's because of certain expectations of her as a mother that are indirectly resulting in this wage gap that is so discriminatory.
Right. I mean, that's why I addressed that a little bit by saying, so you're suggesting, well, maybe she didn't really freely choose to do that. I think she did, and that's what she really wanted. And it's very disturbing to some gender activists that there are women who don't go through Harvard Law. They'll be up for partner, and then they retreat once they have kids. Women will do this. Men don't usually do that, but women will. And you will say, oh, it's social forces. But I can tell you it could be something in them, that when you have a baby and you fall madly in love with this creature in ways that are somewhat different. There are fathers that are like that, but it's not mothers who abandon children. Mothers almost never do unless there's mental illness or something. But fathers do it all the time. Well, women, there's a profound bond. And I think motherhood is, it's just the way we are. And so we want to find policies that are, I just don't want blindly going in and assuming the worst about one another. Let's assume the best about one another. People are trying their best and have good motives, but we are somewhat different. And then what social policies should we have to make life better? There was once an idea to have something called this is not a great name, they call it, you should be able to get a job and go on the mommy track. But I think it should be men or women and not call it the mommy track. But maybe there should be in corporate America and in law firms a track where you just don't want to work. There are probably a lot of men that don't want to work, do what it takes to be partner in a law firm. They don't want to work 70 hours a week year after year, and they want something more reasonable. So maybe that we have to work towards that, a better home work-life balance. And there's some good efforts at that. But I don't know that we can blame that on anything but maybe Mother Nature. Maybe Mother Nature has not read Simone de Beauvoir, or just here we are. Yes.
So, not in regard to the wage gap, but rather like the gender gap in certain positions, like Fortune 500 CEOs. Do you think it's completely natural that men are just more prone to seek out these leadership positions, or do you think women are like socialized to kind of back down a little, because when women are like seeking leadership positions, they're often called bossy, whereas men are called leaders, or they're often like, a bit like pushed away from these positions? Or do you think it's like completely natural?
I don't know for sure. And I think there are a lot of interesting competing explanations. But I will tell you one thing, always keep in mind about men and women. Men, in every society we know, tend to show up at extremes. So yes, you find more men in almost every society at the pinnacles of, the kings and leaders and the Fortune 500, CEOs, but you also find men at the extreme of failure. Men who are, living on the street. Men who are in prison across the world. It's far more men who end up in maximum security prisons than women. If you give tests, you give an SAT. The person with the highest score, gets them all right. It's probably a guy. The person that misses every question, it's probably, there tend to be like more males at the very, very like freakishly high end of the ability spectrum, and at the low end. So men just seem, they psychometricians and people design tests, they call it the spread phenomenon. With men, they're more widely dispersed. So I think when it comes to become a CEO of a Fortune 500, first of all, you have to be like the equivalent of a rock star in terms of what you're going to do. You can turn a company around. You have this reputation, and to have that, you've probably studied economics, finance, or engineering. So there's already a larger pool of men than women, and you probably worked 50, 60 hours a week, stayed at, let everything take second place, and you did it year after year after year, and then you make it if you're lucky, I guess. And now, how many women do that? Some, and they're fabulous, and they're turning up. I mean, that 20% is formidable, but you've got more men that are working that way and competing in that pool, who have studied what they should have in college, went into the professions that lead to being CEO, and have the capacity. I mean, you don't get to be a CEO just because you're popular. They think you can save the company, or you can take the company and lead the, direct this ship to prosperity. I mean, just think about it this way: if it were really true that you could pay women 70% of what you have to pay a man, at this university, why don't you just fire all your male professors and bring in women to take their place? A huge savings, and we'll give it to you in your tuition. Would you take it? Maybe you would. But no, you wouldn't. You miss out, because you want those. You want, whatever they're doing. It's in terms of getting great professors. You want a meritocracy rather than positions allocated by, some kind of blueprint, social engineering. Yes. So one more question. Someone who really yes.
Hi, my name is Jane Lear. I'm chair of the Women's and Gender Studies Department here at Cal Poly, and we have a bunch of our students here, so thank you for coming. There are lots of differences between what you were describing, but then there are actually lots of similarities with contemporary women's and gender studies. I was just making some notes. So we talk about Frances Woolard and maternal feminism in feminist theory here at Cal Poly. We changed our name to Gender and Women's and Gender Studies specifically to talk about masculinity and the challenges faced by men. We have a Gender Equity Center. We graduate pro-life women's and gender studies minors on a regular basis. Many of our students are focused on the maximization of choices. Many of our classes talk about the complex relationships between the biological and the social and the ways in which they produce these particular patterns. And a lot of our work is focused not on the intentional discrimination, but the unintentional legacies of structural discrimination, et cetera. And so I guess my question is, your representation of contemporary feminism is very different than my understanding of contemporary feminisms that exist within women's and gender studies as an academic discipline. So my first question is sort of where does that representation of contemporary feminism come from?
Okay.
And then I'm also in ethnic studies, so I need to ask you, where are women of color in the United States in your discussion?
Well, they're not in feminism.
They actually are women of color in the
If you go to the major women's groups, it's largely.
I think that's part of the problem, though, because I think what you're defining as the major women's groups aren't actually the leading feminist organizations. They say they're the leading feminist organizations, but they're not my leading feminist organization.
What's your leading feminist?
I mean, I really like the Crunk Collective, et cetera, focused specifically on women of color.
The Crunk Collective?
Yes, I'm very focused on environmental justice organizations, typically which are integrating attention to environmental justice, environmental racism, and sexism at the same time. And so I think the sort of DC focus, I'm wondering if that's, I guess I have curiosity about who counts as contemporary feminism.
Okay, the first thing I have to tell you is, yesterday I spoke at UCLA, and there were, the fact that I was coming, there were flyers, there was a demonstration, I mean, not a demonstration, but they had a counter event, and they told people to boycott this woman, don't listen to what she's saying. It was hysteria. And so I thought, what's going to happen at Cal Poly? And I spoke to her, and she said, oh, the gender studies professor told her class to come. And I said, what? I go to a lot of colleges. That doesn't happen. And so I immediately knew you were different, and I thought, I'd like to talk to this woman and see what she's doing, because it is different. Because it happens sometimes. I go to colleges where they're just open, and we can listen to each other. But I go many places. I was just at Yale, and same thing. They invited the gender studies to come in, and not only did that they come in, they sent a few people who made a report, and then they had a meeting the next day and published a protest about what I had said, and never spoke up and never invited me to the meeting. So I don't know, that's what I'm seeing at Yale, and I saw it at UCLA yesterday, and you can just Google my name or follow me on Twitter, because I post all these things. And it's very, very polarizing. And I don't know about the Crump Collective, but if you read Michelle Goldberg in The Nation, there are a lot of feminists now speaking out about all the policing in feminism of one another.
And the Atlantic as well. The Atlantic has been a key site for documenting the contemporary mommy wars, right? And we talk about that a lot in my classes, at least here.
So anyway, I'm just saying that I think where I disagree with you is that you think that you're typical. I think that you're special, and I think it's great what you're doing. And maybe it's more on the West Coast. I don't know, but it wasn't in UCLA. So I wish that were true. And I love hearing that you're. Oh, one other thing though I'd say about masculinity. The only thing I'd add is that a lot of gender studies programs do look at masculinity, but they always problematize it. And what I encourage is look at the good side, because there is aberrational masculinity, and it's dangerous, and it's because men who are pathologically masculine can prey on weaker people and exploit and destroy. Fortunately, that is not the norm. The norm is healthy masculinity, and a healthy masculine being doesn't prey on weak people. He hates that. He protects them. He does not destroy. He builds. And so I, in terms of gender, I'm encouraging people to think not so much always about the dark side of masculinity, but also the bright side, and to acknowledge the dark side of femininity, and not just the good side. We're human, and we're complicated, and neither sex has the monopoly on good or evil. So, but I think maybe. Awesome. Okay, is that it? Thank you for coming.